Hi guys. I am ready to play the end of chapter 3 in Swipe. I know some of you look way forward to this. I hope you're enjoying the book. I'm really enjoying the book. I'm caught up.
Please pardon the interruption.
Hold on.
Mr. Rodriguez, please report to the main office. Mr. Rodriguez, report to the main office.
All right, we're on the same chapter now. I'm all caught up with you guys. So we are going to continue listening. Hopefully we put a good dent in this book. I know with only having library once a week, it can seem to drag on, but hopefully you're just excited to hear about the story, and then maybe you look forward to this every week. Maybe. All right, so Swipe, chapter 3, part 8. All right, let's get going. Let's hear about Logan, Aaron Arbiter, their families, the swipe mark, Lily, that's Logan's sister, Mr. Arbiter, some kind of spy or something maybe. All right.
Logan found himself telling this to Aaron, all of it at once, without thinking on the rest of their walk home. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because he finally had her attention,
about his sister,
and he didn't want her to look away. Maybe it was just on his mind recently, and easier to talk about to a stranger. Or maybe deep down, Logan really did have a bone to pick with Aaron and her dome bureaucrat father. Either way, he kept going, telling everything he remembered, telling all the details, layers and layers of them, beyond any he'd even heard himself give before, even to his closest friends, and his words surprised him. By the time he was done, they'd made it all the way home to Aaron's apartment building, and it was there that Aaron surprised herself too. She invited Logan in. "So you've been paranoid ever since?" she asked. "I don't think I'm paranoid," Logan said. "My mom does, as if she's one to talk, and my dad, but he puts it in different terms." "What's wrong with your mom?" Aaron asked. "I'm not sure. I think the day my sister didn't come back from the pledge, Mom just checked out. Everything inside her just left, like poking a hole in an egg and sucking out the yolk. Mom's all shell now." The furniture in Aaron's apartment was mostly still wrapped in shipping tape, and the floors were littered with boxes. So Logan made his way toward the kitchen table and sat in a fold-up chair by its side. "Dad won't be home till late. Last night, he didn't make it back until morning, I think. So we're on our own." "Okay," Logan said, his voice cracking a little, but he nearly fell to the floor when something darted up the curtains beside him. To Logan, it looked like a dragon hanging by its claws, 4 feet long, scaly and wild. "Aaron!" he yelled helplessly. "Oh," she laughed. "Except for my iguana." "You have a pet iguana?" Logan looked at it stupidly. "Shouldn't that be illegal or something?" "It is," Aaron said. "Thing about having a law enforcer for a dad, though." Logan inched his chair away from the window. "What's its name?" "Iggy." Logan stared at it. The lizard basked in the light of the window, tilting its head to peer at the two of them thoughtfully. "You named your iguana Iggy?" Aaron reached up and grabbed the animal, draping it gently around her neck. It paced from shoulder to shoulder. "I guess." "You gonna name your kids kitties?" "First of all," Aaron said, walking to the cupboard, "I'm never having kids. And second of all, it's an iguana. What's he gonna do with a proper name? You think he's struggling with self-identity?" She picked out an apple and began rubbing it on her shirt, right where the lizard's tail had been. "Snack?" "I've heard those pets carry disease," Logan said tentatively. "Yeah?" Aaron nodded. "Salmonella." She held the apple out to him and smiled. "No, thanks," he said. "So your sister. Erin sat next to Logan and pulled the iguana down to her lap, petting it in a way it didn't particularly seem to mind. She ate the apple as she spoke. What happened when she didn't come back? Logan sighed, keeping an eye on the lizard, but mostly looking down. One distant part of him ecstatic to have made friends with the new girl so quickly, but the other devastated to have done so this way. He couldn't imagine his sister's story being the basis of any positive relationship. You mean that night? He finally said. Erin shrugged. I was shielded from a lot of it, but of what I can remember, some dome officer came to our house, said something like, "We regret to inform you your daughter won't be returning from her pledge," which my parents didn't understand. So he told them sometimes the pledge process didn't agree with the marquee, that it was rare, but that on occasion it happened. Procedural risk, I guess he called it. And my parents asked, "Dead? Is she dead?" And they started to cry. And the officer said we'd be compensated for our loss. Compensated? Mom doesn't have to work anymore if she doesn't want to. And her medical bills are covered by Dome, prescriptions and such. Though the deal terminates on my 13th birthday in November if I don't pledge. Dome's little form of persuasion, I guess. What about your dad? Same offer, but he refused it. How come I never heard of anything like this? Logan frowned. It's probably not in Dome's interest to talk about it, even among themselves. He shrugged. Anyway, things have been sort of rough for me ever since. I've spent a lot of time scared. Of the mark? No, of being watched. Soon after Lily didn't come back, I guess I started feeling haunted. I'd hear footsteps in her room at night. I'd see faces in my window, or thought I did. Things in my room seemed to move on their own while I was away. There were a few years where it had gotten better, even went away. But recently, it's come back big time. These last few months, everywhere I go, I feel like I'm being followed or... Logan stopped himself. I know it sounds crazy. Erin leaned down to put her iguana on the floor, and it dashed out of sight. You don't actually think you're haunted, do you? She asked. Logan laughed. Not by Lily. Not by ghosts, he said. That'd be less scary, I think. He shook his head. No, someone really has his eye on me. Do you have proof? Erin said. None. Nothing I can point to, anyway. That's why it all sounds so ridiculous. But I'm not crazy, Erin. I swear to you. He stared at her for a moment, and she stared back, curious, evaluating, piecing him together like a puzzle. Inside her head, something uncanny rang out, some distant alarm about... Heck? The markless threat in Spooky? But none of that surfaced just yet. Instead, it weighed on Erin. A pressure just her skull, waiting to get out. It hummed like a tea kettle in the silence of the room. Hey, I should probably get going, Logan said. He looked at the time on his tablet and noticed his father's 3 missed calls. It's getting dark. My parents are probably worried. He tried to look nonchalant about it when he tapped the tablet to call his dad back. But Erin noticed he made it a private call. Yes, I'm so sorry, Dad. Walked a friend home from school and just lost track of time. I'm on my way, I promise. Logan ended the call. I'll see you around, Erin said with a wave. Tomorrow, Logan added. Erin was slow about closing the door behind him. 9. As he exited the building, Logan tried to take in the possibilities of his new friendship. He knew he liked Erin a lot. And here he was, leaving her apartment, to which he'd actually been invited. But his excitement quickly went dull against the grinding prospect of a long and terrifying walk home in the dark. Logan didn't like evenings even when he was safe in his own home. A stroll by himself through dimly lit sidewalks on empty streets was enough to make his heart race. "You're stupid," Logan told himself. "There's no danger in this. It's just a stupid walk home." But he didn't believe it. "No one is after you. No one is watching you. It's just you and your stupid secret flashlight and the mile between here and your front door. No problem at all." He refused to call home. He refused to call Aaron. He would be fine. But the trash can rang out in a nearby alley. "It's a cat," Logan thought. "Or a raccoon. Nothing with its eyes on you." But Logan picked up the pace even so. He wasn't far now from Wright Street, just another couple blocks, and he crossed each with increasing speed. Along the way, he gazed up periodically into the yellow-lit windows of the houses along the street, looking at each for the warmth inside. This one belonged to the Coles, that one to the Conways. He ran through the list of names in his head, bringing each one to the tip of his tongue, ready to shout them out at the slightest sign of trouble. "Carl, help!" he thought. "Rachel, I'm being attacked!" "Yes, good! That would work. That would bring them out here." If he'd had the mark, Logan would have hopped on the Electro bus. He would have at least stopped in a deli or a convenience store on the way home, just for the respite of a lit room with a cashier to watch over him for a minute. But he didn't have the mark, and he had to get back. "Footsteps. I hear footsteps behind me." Logan spun around and took in the scene. Long shadows under a crimson three-quarters moon. Tall, thin buildings lining the streets. Wind-blowing trash and stray leaves from a nearby park. No one visible, but there were plenty of places to hide. "Hello?" Logan called. No answer. Desperate, he took the flashlight from his back pocket and swung it around in long, frantic arcs. Nothing. The shadows danced in its beam. "I can see you," Logan bluffed, speaking to no one, knowing no answer would come. Sure that this was just another one of his own delusions, but indulging it even so. For a split second, he even contemplated walking toward the sounds in the alley, imagined confronting whatever it was that haunted him right here and now, to prove it to himself that there was nothing there, that these fears were unfounded, that he was being ridiculous. But Logan knew that was a fantasy. He shuffled one step forward, and that was exactly as far as his nerves would take him. "So you might as well just come on out," Logan said, startled at the sound of his own voice, the beam of his flashlight shaking wildly in the grip of his trembling hand. "Stop playing games." Then Logan heard a shuffle just past the garbage bags on his left and thought, "Trash, leaves. That could have been anything, but it wasn't a person. It couldn't have been a person because no one is following you." And with all the willpower he could muster, Logan shut the flashlight off and forced himself to turn around, to finish his walk home like a grown-up, like someone he could respect, like someone not afraid of the dark. But Logan heard another footstep now, close this time, and he couldn't help but indulge his fear once more. "Just one look," he thought. "That's it. That'll be all I allow myself." He would glance over his shoulder. He would turn in place and face the moonlit alley. And that's when Logan saw the boy. Real, born not of imagination or paranoia or delusion, but of blood and bones and skin and nerves. He was a teenager, unidentifiable in the shadows among the trash, but solid and actual and horrifying in a way entirely new from the abstract fears Logan had known until now. 5 years of bottled terror flowed through Logan all at once, paralyzing him, filling him with a grave sense of acceptance that if this boy were to charge or attack right at this moment, Logan would simply let him. Logan would simply let it end. But the boy didn't attack. Instead, the boy turned and ran fast down the Blood Moon streets, and Logan followed before any part of him could think better of it. 10. Back in her apartment, and still a little spooked by what Logan had been saying, Erin checked the locks on her front door twice before crashing onto the bubble wrap of her living room couch. It squeaked and popped beneath her as she slumped down and pulled her knees up, tucking her chin into the collar of her shirt and resting a tablet computer against her legs. She unfolded it and stared at her reflection in its blank screen, noticing her hair sticking out in unkempt wisps, seeing the bags under her eyes, realizing that her brow and lips were curled down in an ugly grimace. Finally, she turned the thing on, dragging some files aside and opening its message window. Then she stared at that too for more than a few minutes before she finally made the call. "Mom," she said. "Hi." And a hologram of Dr. Arbiter's head popped up out of the screen. "Erin, how have you been? I haven't heard anything. I've been so curious. How's Spokey? How was your train ride? How's your new school?" Erin immediately felt a flood of guilt for not calling her mom sooner. "It's good," she swallowed. "Yeah? What's it like out in the country?" "Quiet," Erin said honestly. "But Iggy seems to be adjusting." "That's good." Dr. Arbiter laughed, and Erin turned the tablet so her mom could see the lizard, perched under a reading lamp and absorbing its heat. "How's Beacon?" Erin asked. "The same. Lonelier now." Dr. Arbiter smiled, and it broke Erin's heart. "I shouldn't be out here," she said. "You shouldn't have let Dad do this to us." "I had nothing to do with it, sweetie." "You should have let me stay with you. I wanted to stay with you." Her sadness turned to anger now. "That wouldn't have been possible, Erin. You know I'm in Europe half-time these days. There wasn't a choice in the matter." "Wasn't a choice? At what point is one of you going to stand up and put this family first?" Dr. Arbiter was quiet for a long time. "Mom?" Erin said finally. She thought hard about which words to say next. "Are you and Dad okay?" Dr. Arbiter frowned over the connection. "Why?" She cleared her throat. "Why would you ask that?" "He insists everything's fine. To hear him tell it, you're joining us out here any day now. But I know you're not going to, and I tell him so." She scanned the small, undecorated space of the room around her. "So then he changes his story, says it won't be long before we come home to you." Now Erin's eyes found the dome box in the corner, holding the truth behind the scope of her father's assignment. "But I don't think that's true either. In fact, I'm starting to think the job he took here is supposed to last a good long while." Dr. Arbiter left the tablet's field of view. Through the connection, Erin could see the living room of her apartment back in Beacon, and a new wave of awful homesickness swept over her. She could see her mom's hunched shadow in the reflection of a far window, and Erin thought with some alarm that her mother appeared to be wiping her eyes. "Mom, when are we going to be a family again?" "That's up to your father, dear." "No, it isn't. It's up to both of you. You're in this marriage together." And immediately, Erin was hysterical. "How could you let things come to this? Did you really think you could keep it from me? Who gave you two the right to destroy my life like this?" She went on and on, not listening to her mom's stuttered interjections and not wanting to. "Erin, please." Dr. Arbiter finally snapped, and Erin subsided. "There's no reason to get so worked up about—" But Erin was worked up. And for no good reason, she thought of bedtime reading and Shakespeare in pajamas. And then her heart broke in two, and then it sank, and burned in little pieces in the acid of her stomach, and suddenly she was very worked up, and she said, "Are either of you even trying anymore?" And Dr. Arbiter said, "Of course we are." But the words hit Erin like a punch in the gut, because her mother's voice was hollow. It was broken. Her mother was lying. "I love you, Mom," Erin said, ending the call so fast she wasn't even sure all the words made it out. She was not about to let her mother see her cry. Dr. Arbiter called her back, of course, immediately, and probably frantically, and surely wanted to at least say, "I love you too." But Erin would not let her do that. She declined the call, and when she did, she saw her own reflection again in the glass of the tablet's screen. And this time, it was red and blotchy, and it disgusted her. So she threw the computer into the bubble wrap of the couch, and she insisted to herself that she was disappointed when the thing didn't break. "It's up to your father, dear. It's up to your mother, dear. It's up to the other to keep us together, dear." Erin paced across the room, sobbing, mocking herself. "Dear sweetie, it's up to your—" And she made her way to Iggy, whom she picked up and kissed on the head. "I heard those pets carry disease," Logan had said, and she hoped it would give her salmonella. She hoped to puke her guts out. She kissed the lizard again. She wanted to puke her brains out and die. She cried and held Iggy in her lap for a long time. And it was in that odd moment that Erin found her resolve. She would be the one to get herself back to Beacon. She would be the one to pull her family back together. And if that meant solving the mystery of Peck and the markless threat in Spokey herself, then that's exactly what Erin intended to do. 11. At that moment, 17 stories below, a boy named...
Okay, so we're hearing about Erin and her family now, and we're getting a kind of a glimpse into their life and their estrangement that's going on. And clearly, Erin is emotionally affected by this. So we're going to continue.
And Blake ran over the shadowed sidewalks of Spokey, furious with himself and weighing the consequences of having been seen. "It's not as bad as getting caught," he concluded, darting unpredictably through side alleys and streets. "Whatever they are, they're not as bad as getting caught would be." Behind him, he heard the heavy breathing of the boy he was supposed to be pursuing. But that was botched. This was backward. What Blake had witnessed just moments before in their showdown on Wright Street was a new side of the boy he and the dust had followed all these years. A latent spark in the eyes of a kid he'd always seen as broken. Perhaps it was this spark that Peck had seen all along. Perhaps that spark was the danger. Half a block behind, and running off pure stupid adrenaline, Logan yelled between breaths, "Just tell me what you want from me. It's all over now. Just tell me what you want." But it wasn't over. And as houses turned to empty lots and street lamps faded off into the far distance behind them, Logan began to lose his nerve. Slowly, it dawned on him exactly where he was chasing this boy, exactly where he himself was headed, and the realization was far from welcome. Slog Row, the most dangerous, sordid street in all of suburban New Chicago. The streets crawled with markless, with disease and crime. He could not go there, ever. To walk down Slog Row was to walk with death. Whoever this boy was, he had as good as escaped. Logan's steps slowed to a stop, and he caught his breath with his hands resting on his bent knees. He could follow no farther. Before him now, beyond the several empty lots and across the crumbling abandoned 6-lane expressway of years ago, was the silent and decaying street of so many parental warnings. He could see its panorama all at once. And in the moonlight, It was seething, a corpse lined with maggots. What was I thinking? Logan thought. Following even this far. And yet, something in Logan had come alive. Something in him had flirted with the danger he'd spent so long avoiding, and the danger flirted back. But no, that's crazy, and your parents will be worried sick. So all at once, Logan's nerves dropped out from under him like a trap door, and he turned to burst full sprint down the quiet Spokey Avenue from which he came, not looking back, not catching his breath, not stopping for anything else until he'd reached the safety of his own front door. Chapter 4. The Invitation. 1. The next day at school, Logan was jumpy.
All right. So we finished chapter 3, and I do want to listen to part 1 of chapter 4 so that we can get a peek. So then we're raring to go for next time, okay?
Even for him. You always been this weird? Dane asked as they filed out of computer science. Looks like you had about 4 cups of nano tea this morning. Logan spun around as if Dane had poked him with something burning. Sleepless night, he said, without a trace of humor in his voice. Sorry to hear it. Dane frowned. Hey, Tom, he yelled. Aren't you pledging today? Just finished, Tom said. He held his wrist up. Its nano ink was so fresh it sparkled. First thing this morning, I walked straight here from the center. Couldn't wait any longer to show this bad boy off. He pointed smugly at the mark. That's awesome, Dane said. Hey, buy me a soda. You bullying me for my lunch money, Harold? Tom asked. Sure am. Dane laughed, and he pounced on Tom's arm, wrestling the class president, grabbing at his wrist with fake effort to pull the guy's hand off. Tom, who had Dane by 4 inches and at least 30 pounds, stood and waited for the joke to be over while Logan tried not to laugh. Dane, Harold, knock it off, the school secretary said as she hurried past. Sorry, Miss Carroll. Dane gave up the act and brushed his hair down. Tom turned to Logan with fresh interest. So, Logan, you coming to auditions after school? Logan shrugged, the Spokey Middle Drama Club being the furthest thing from his mind. Mark of a salesman, remember? Be a great chance to meet people if you made the show. Make some friends. What's that supposed to mean? Dane asked. Oh, I just thought... Tom backpedaled. I mean, you know. I'm zonked anyway, Logan said. I think I'd better not. Well, suit yourself. Tom clapped him on the shoulder. You coming to English, Dane? Yeah, Dane said, and soon Logan was alone in the hallway. He walked to history through the prairie wing, where in the virtual window a lion crouched low and followed him the whole way to class. School that day was slow, but Logan's mind couldn't have stopped racing if he'd begged it to. All those years spent certain he was crazy, exasperating his parents, visiting doctors and refusing prescriptions, answering questions and absorbing doubts and suspicions that were anything but fair. All of that overturned in an instant by one stalking silhouette. He'd been right this whole time, and he didn't know what to do about it. He hadn't told his parents. If they'd believed the story of his walk home, it would have been a miracle. More likely, it only would have led to a disappointed look and perhaps another doctor's appointment. He would not tell Aaron either. Logan was already angry with himself for going on so long about his sister and his fears the night before. Next time he and Aaron talked, Logan was determined it would be about how much homework they had, or how the teachers compared to those in Beacon, or where to find the best pizza in town. or which after-school activities they might be interested in joining together. "So," Logan said, "got any big plans tonight?" By the time economics rolled around, he had practiced this opening line about 100 times. "Huh?" Aaron asked. She looked at him as if from a far-off place. Logan cleared his throat. "I said, got any big plans tonight?" He'd rehearsed the words so extensively in his head that when he said them a second time, they came out in exactly the same cadence. "It's Tuesday," Aaron said, brushing him off. "Why would I have plans?" Logan was crushed. He couldn't have guessed that her response was coming from a place of paranoia and guilt. Truthfully, Aaron did have plans that night. And not only were they big, they were illegal. They would begin with the deliberate theft of classified information, and she couldn't imagine they'd get any rosier from there. "I just thought maybe, Logan struggled to form a complete sentence. He hadn't prepared for this particular contingency, but Aaron laughed in a way that was friendly and genuine, and Logan caught his breath and shut up. "He's not on to me," Aaron thought. "He's just being dorky old Logan. I'll probably mostly be doing homework." Aaron lied. "Don't want to get behind already, being the new girl and all." "That's smart," Logan said. "I'll probably be doing that too. Maybe study for the pledge some." He felt himself calming down now. This had been the idea. This was exactly the conversation he had in mind. "If I finish early, maybe I'll sneak a movie on my tablet," Aaron continued. She'd heard once that the key to dishonesty was specificity. "Sounds boring, I know." "That doesn't sound boring." "Oh, it will be," Aaron laughed. "It'd just be some romantic comedy." "I like romantic comedies," Logan said. Aaron laughed again, more nervously now. "Yeah, but, like, this'll be a really awful one, though. How bad could it... Bad," she insisted. There was much too much to be done before her father got off work tonight for Logan to get any idea about following her home again. But Logan wasn't inviting himself over. He was simply making the small talk he had been so determined to make. And throughout the lesson, each time he'd lean over to whisper a joke or to pretend to need clarification on a point the teacher had made, Logan forgot a little more completely about the stress he was under and the danger he was in. In all of it, Logan never once mentioned the stalker on his walk home from Aaron's the night before. And Aaron never once mentioned her unfolding plans to moonlight as an unlicensed spy.
Okay, so we see that Aaron is keeping it light and that Logan is also keeping it light. They're talking in school now after the encounter where he told her about his sister, and then the encounter that Aaron had with her parents, and then the encounter Logan had separately as he was walking home from Aaron's house. So they're not bringing up each other's issues. They're just having some small talk. We can see the chemistry going between them, though, as we're listening. So I'm going to continue chapter 4 next time. So I hope you guys all have a great week. You have a great weekend coming up, and you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.